Welcome to 20th Century Music and Arts. You know, after looking at the subjects like the progression of distorted guitar rock in the 60s or the career of Hawkwind, I have just come to the conclusion, well, I've had this conclusion for a long time, that the best guitar sounds, electric guitar sounds, my favorite sounds, are from the period of around 1969 to about 1972. You could go maybe a year or two earlier, and maybe 2 or 3 years after that. But let's stick between 69 and 72. All of this raw, distorted fuzz of that era that's in a lot of music, it just resonates with me. And I find when I'm listening to music, this is the era I come back to. So what I've done today is we're going to do another list. I haven't done a list in a while. I've selected 30 albums that capture that kind of fuzz, distorted guitar essence from that time period. And I've only selected one album from each band. So there could be bands that would have several albums on this list. But I'm going to just go one album per band, and we're just going to run through the years 69 to 72. All right, let's get started with 1969. Now, in 1969... we have to do Led Zeppelin 2. Yes, we could have done Led Zeppelin 1, but I'm choosing Led Zeppelin 2. This is probably my favorite Led Zeppelin album. You've got these heavy, bluesy riffs that are just fantastic, absolutely raw, and tracks like the Lemon Song, Heartbreaker, Moby Dick, What Is and What Should Never Be. The whole album has just got this dark, distorted sound in so many of the tracks, and then there's the intensity of Whole Lotta Love, and I've talked about how much I love that song. That's one of the greatest rock songs of all time. So Led Zeppelin 2 definitely makes the list. And then we got Grand Funk Railroad's second album, often known as the Red Album. Again, I could have chosen On Time as well, but I'm choosing the Red Album. This album has a raw, primitive distortion and groove to it. It's like this volume distortion, and it's because of it, it's got this certain grit and soul. The guitar and bass, it really gets turned up. And then there's this track called Paranoid, and boy, that is heavy. And don't tell me that didn't influence Black Sabbath on the sounds at the beginning on War Pigs, and of course the track Paranoid. Sure, they got the name from it, but yeah, you got to check out Grand Funk Railroad's Red Album. Then of course we've got MC5 Kick Out the Jams. This is just raw punk power. It's got these double leads. There's this whole ton of fuzz, and it's a live album. It's just incredible. The title track, what can I say about it? There's so many great jams on this. So it's heavy, but it's got a jamminess to it too. It's just awesome. Then we'll go and check out Wassa Wassa by the Edgar Broughton Band. This is awesome. It sounds like Captain Beefheart with an evil, distorted blues band. It's this trippy heaviness. It's absolutely amazing. And then we'll finish up with Neil Young and Crazy Horse. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere. Just a jammy folk sound here, but the distortion's turned way up on the guitars. There's this fuzz that Neil Young has. Apparently, he still keeps using the same pedal, which is why his guitar sounds so awesome. Down by the River, the title track, it's just amazing stuff. Okay, 1970. Okay, you're going to notice I've left a certain band's debut in another album from this list because I'm limiting myself to one band. So do not have a meltdown when you don't see that band's album from 1970 or their other album from 1970. I figure you can figure out what that band is. Let's start with Deep Purple in Rock. Oh man, the sound here is absolutely savage. It's the intensity of the opening track, Speed King. I don't think that had ever really been heard in rock before. And then you got like Bloodsucker, Into the Fire, Flight of the Rat, Hard Loving Man. I mean, Ritchie Blackmore, he just has this he's got the technical proficiency, but he's got this serious heaviness going on with his Fender Strat and his whammy bar. It's just awesome. Then, of course, we have to talk about the Stooges album, Funhouse. Now, I have done a whole video explaining why this is the greatest rock album of all time. And it is. The sound here is passionate, it's raw, and it's this live in the studio recording style that makes the record so amazing. And of course, lead guitarist Ron Ashton, he brings the fuzz. In fact, the whole first side has the greatest moments in rock and roll, especially TVI. Greatest rock song. Okay, maybe tied with Whole Lotta Love. But yeah, the Stooges' Funhouse is just essential. It's amazing. And they jam on some like free jazz stuff too. It's just incredible. Okay, then we gotta go to an album you should play around Halloween. Death Box Behind You by Atomic Rooster. Now the sound on this album is scary. It's like a combination of heavy organ and just menacing guitar. That's going to be a trend a lot in 1970, that heavy organ, because Deep Purple had that too, and a lot of other bands. But, you know, this is heavy, dark, and it's got this proto-prog thing happening, and that title song is like, it's as horror movie as a rock song gets. Just check out that album. Incredible. Okay, well, we're going to keep on that theme of the heavy organ and the heavy guitar, and we got to talk about Uriah Heep's debut, Very humble, no H's. You know, it's another great album, again, combining the heavy guitar and organ, and that Gypsy, that opening track, so heavy. There's Dream Mare, Bird of Prey. Yeah, there's soft bits on the album, but the album just has this epicness to it, you know? And nobody combined rock with the fantasy genre as well as these guys. Like, you really wanted to inhabit the lands that they talk about. It's awesome. Then you got this band, Lucifer's Friend. You know, transport a similar band to Uriah Heep and have them operate out of Germany. And just give them an evil sounding name and you've got this album. I remember buying this album. It scared me as a kid, but it was just amazing. The opening track is almost like proto-thrash, but with a French horn. And you got the singer John Lawton. He can wail like a banshee as good as Robert Plant or Ian Gillan. Whole album is just incredible. And they never had an album as good as this one again. Now let's go over the States. We got to look at Mountain's debut, called Mountain Climbing. Now, this is an example of some of these like fierce blues bands that turn the volume way up. Yeah, Mountain Climbing. He actually had released an album earlier just called Mountain, Leslie West, and then he decided to call that his band name. You know, not every song on this album is heavy, but the ones that are heavy are really heavy. You know, the opening track, Mississippi Queen, that's like got the baddest sounding guitar sound you could ask for. Same with Never in My Life and Sitting on a Rainbow. It's just awesome heavy blues raunch. And same thing could be said for the next album, which is Cactus's self-titled. You got that famous Vanilla Fudge rhythm section hooking up with Rusty Day and Jim McCarty. It's the track Parchment Farm, which opens the album, is just as raw and as heavy as electric blues gets. Got great tracks like Let Me Swim. It actually has this intense fast solo that was apparently an inspiration for Eddie Van Halen's Eruption. And there's also this track Feel So Good. It's great, and it's got a big drum solo in it. Awesome album. Check out Cactus. Now, well, the next couple albums are going to really bring that fuzz that I'm looking for. That fuzz kind of proto-doom sound. And, you know, the kind of thing that all these players in Seattle in the late 80s were kind of looking for. And the first of these is the album Kingdom Come by Sir Lord Baltimore. Man, the fuzz and distortion is so good here. It's so raw and unpolished. You got to check this out. Tracks like Master Heartache, the title track, and Hellhound. I mean, look at these heavy metal sounding names. In fact, this was one of the first bands, I think in one of the reviews, that would be described as heavy metal. Awesome. Then we got this really primitive, cool album by Randy Holden called Population 2. This album's really unique. It's inspired, obviously, by, like, Hendrix, and it's this guitar is actually in Blue Cheer, though he did not play on the really heavy albums, and he was from another band called The Other Half. Now, this is not a trio. This is a duo. It's just Randy with a drummer and a guy who sometimes plays keyboards too. This is both like self-indulgent and badass at the same time. The opening track is called Guitar Song. Yeah. It sounds kind of like a more primitive Robin Trower, or just big, heavy, acid rock proto-doom. So good. So good. And then you've got the James Gang and their album James Gang Rides Again. You know, before Joan Walsh joined the Eagles, he was in a real groovy heavy rock band, and they released an album in 1970, James Gang Rides Again. Great musicianship. There is the awesome 3-part jam called The Bomber, the song called Woman, Funk 49. Amazing. Okay, it's not the heaviest album on the list, but hey, it's my list, and this album's awesome. And you know what? Let's go a little more eclectic here. Last album for 1970, we're going to do David Bowie, Man Who Sold the World. This is David Bowie when he had turned up the distortion a whole lot, courtesy of Mick Ronson. Listen to the opening track, Width of a Circle, is just awesome. Great distorted guitar. Same with the tracks like All the Madman, Black Country Rock, and She Shook Me Cold. Yeah, this is definitely the most heavy of David Bowie's 70s albums. I don't think he'd go right into the heavy guitar thing again until he started doing the Tin Machine thing in the late 80s, but you got to check this album out. Wish it was more well known out of his catalog. All right, we're in 1971, and everyone calm down, please. Yes, I do have Black Sabbath on this list. Remember, it was one album only. So, which album I choose? I gotta choose Master of Reality. Okay? If you want to get into distorted guitar rock, check out the 2 before and the 3 after. I mean, you can check out the whole catalog of Sabbath, but really those first 6 or so are really the ones you want to check out. This is Sabbath definitely at their sludgiest. This is when they did the drop D tuning, and it's just amazing from start to finish. Sweet Leaf, After Forever, Children of the Grave, gives the world the introduction to thrash metal possibly. Lord of this World, and Into the Void. That's one of the heaviest songs ever. Now, I got a whole series on Sabbath. Go check that out. Now, we got to go over to Wales and look at Budgie's self-titled debut. Oh, man. This band should be mentioned in the same breath as Purple, Zeppelin, and Sabbath. And, their debut is amazing. The Welsh power trio, they bring the heavy. Just amazing. I mean, check out the opening track, Guts, with that sound. And there's a track called The Author and Nude Parachutist Woman. Wow. Interesting title. And the US version has the incredible track, Crash Course in Brain Surgery. Yeah. Get into Budgie. Budgie are awesome. Okay, then we go over to Japan. A band called the Flower Traveling Band, and they have this album called Satori. This album is wild. It's actually one track, Satori, and it's broken up into 5 parts. But, how do I describe this? It's like Black Sabbath meets world music, meets a jam band. It goes all over the place. It's totally tripped out, but it's crazy heavy. And you got these wild vocals and heavy riffs and then these weird kind of arrangements in there. I'm really not doing it justice. You got to go hear this. And, of course, got to do the Groundhog Split. I did a whole video on this band, and this band's just incredible. Heavy, complex blues dynamics. It's absolutely awesome. It's not too complex to just be sludge, but too raw to be kind of proggy. It's just amazing. You got to check out the Groundhogs. They're incredible. And it has this song, Cherry Red. This is one of the best rock songs of all time. Okay, if we're in 1971, I got to talk about Hawkwind in Search of Space. I just finished a video on this band. This album is amazing. It's just these tripped out, heavy riff, proto-punk stuff. It's just amazing, but it's mesmerizing. And again, Master of the Universe, one of the best rock songs of all time. Let's look at Three Man Army, A Third of a Lifetime. Oh wow, this album is excellent. The band consisted of the Gurvitz brothers. They had been in a band called Gun, or The Gun. They had a great song called Race with the Devil. And there was apparently a whole host of percussionists who came in. It's just, great, intense blues rock, got that raw sound. Standout tracks include Butter Queen, What's My Name, See What I Took in Traveling. And yeah, great hard rock here. And last album for 1971, we gotta go with Funkadelic and Maggot Brain. What an awesome album. The title track is like this 10-minute solo guitar piece with Eddie Hazel. This is absolutely fantastic. This is just incredible guitar playing that it doesn't come across as self-indulgent either. And then there's great funky tracks like Hit It and Quit It that has a raw low-end guitar. And there's a crazy jam at the end called Wars of Armageddon. And then there's Super Stupid. Wow. This is your heavy funk metal crossover long before the Red Hot Chili Peppers ever existed. And it's way better and rawer and cooler. Okay. Eddie Hazel, really. I wish he was in more conversations about the great guitar players from the 70s. He's absolutely awesome. Okay, final year we're going to look at 1972. So remember, I'm only doing one album per band, so there's going to be albums missing from this list. Okay, let's look at Bang. The Florida trio Bang, they recorded an album and the record company did not like it. So they go back to the studio and they record an album heavily influenced by Black Sabbath. And the result is this awesome album. Again, it's like an American version of Black Sabbath with songs like Lions and Christians, The Queen, Come With Me. It's just got that dark rawness. It's just amazing stuff. Then we got Heart Attack by Dust. Before Marky Ramone became a Ramone, he was just Mark Bell and he was a drummer on this album. Again, called Heart Attack. With an awesome-looking Frank Frazetta cover. This album's great, man. The power trio, actually like Bang, they're a power trio, play fierce hard rock, and the standout tracks include Learning to Die, Ivory, and a song whose title means to self-cancel oneself. YouTube. What can you do? Check out this album. And then, go with another power trio, man. Let's look at Highway Robbery. for love or money. This is great. Just a raw, it's kind of Zeppelin inspired, but kind of all over, maybe a bit of Grand Funk in there too. It's just great and heavy. Amazing tracks throughout the album like Mystery Rider, 15, Bells, Promotion Brand, just great stuff. And then let's look at Captain Beyond. Wow, after Rod Evans left Deep Purple and they blew up into the stratosphere, he actually joined a pretty interesting sounding band with members who played with Johnny Winter and Iron Butterfly. Captain Beyond, they have this cool jazzy groove to their distorted guitar rock. Really, really good stuff. Even it gets near like prog infusion and space rock, but it's hard rocking, it's complex, it's very interesting. So many incredible tracks on this album. Dancing Madly Backwards on a Sea of Air, Mesmeration Eclipse, Raging River of Fear, and then this epic track, which is called 1,000 Days Yesterday, intro, Frozen Over, then 1,000 Days Yesterday. I guess it's 3 parts. It's really too bad this band was not more successful, and I was trying to find out whatever happened to Rod Evans. He should have been at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when Deep Purple was inducted, but that's another story. Then there's this band Night Sun, who have this album called Mornin' without a G. They're out of Germany. I got to do a whole thing on the German music scene of the early 70s, krautrock, Musikkamische, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, we're just sticking with the fuzz and distortion. This album is seriously dynamic and heavy. It's like they take Uriah Heep, that kind of sound, and they put it on steroids. It's just heavy and intense, chaotic music. The opening track, Plastic Shotgun, it's, wow, unbelievable. Unbelievable in heaviness and intensity and speed. Got a Bone of My Own, that's another track, it has this great evil sounding riff. And then there's Living with the Dying, and then Don't Start Flying, and that has some intense saxophone. I mean, just check out this whole album, Night Sun Morning. Wish more people knew it. And then you got this album by this band called Jerusalem. It's self-titled. This band's out of the UK. It was produced by Ian Gillan of Deep Purple. Again, we got some real raw proto-metal here. Just fierce stuff with awesome distortion and the early 70s darkness. Amazing tracks like Frustration, Murderers, Lamont, Kamikaze Moth, She Came Like a Bat from Hell. Great names. Great names, the album. Really cool stuff. And then I think my last album will be solo album by Randy California. He was from the band Spirit, and he has this album called Capped Copter and the Fabulous Twirly Birds. This is a cool album. It's Randy California had been friends with Jimi Hendrix, who passed away a couple of years earlier, and he created these kind of raw Hendrix-inspired jams. There's a lot of real raw and groovy sound here. He's an amazing guitar player. The amazing opener Downer is great. There's a cover of James Brown's I Don't Want Nobody, a really raw cover of the Beatles' Day Tripper, and a great closer called Rainbow. You know what? Since I mentioned Hendrix really should be on this list. So you know what? I'm going to throw in a bonus. I know I said I'd only do 30. I guess this is 31. I have to count again. I think it's that. So why don't we throw in Band of Gypsies? It's from 1970. It was actually recorded New Year's Day in 1970. The album has so many great songs. This is Hendrix at his grooviness, but it's still really heavy. Amazing tracks like Who Knows, Machine Gun, that's epic. Message to Love. Don't just listen to the whole album. Okay, there you have it. My favorite heavy distorted fuzz of kind of late 60s, early 70s. I just love the vibe and the sound of that era. I do not want that clean 80s sounding guitar. I want the fuzz. Okay? But that's me. So, thank you for watching 20th Century Music and Arts. Please like, share, subscribe. Please subscribe. And comment. What is your favorite music from 1969 to 1972? It doesn't have to be heavy if you don't want it to be. All right. Thanks for listening.